Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. I am ready for the event.
Air Force Research Laboratory, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Brian Mitchell with the Air Force Research Laboratory. How do you hear me?
Mitch, this is Johnny Kim on board the International Space Station. I hear you loud and clear.
How you doing, Johnny?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. How are you? I'm looking forward to our
Doing absolutely wonderful. We've got a room full of AFRL scholars, interns, and some of our colleagues from the Air Force Research Laboratory and the Doolittle Institute. Really incredibly excited to spend a little time with you this morning. Really, really appreciate it.
It's an honor for me to share all the amazing science and technology demonstrations that we do on board the International Space Station.
All right, so I think you've probably seen the question, so that's good, right? So we're not going to play any gotchas. So the first question: how have you applied your mathematics background concretely in complex mission tasks, like, for example, navigation, systems modeling, or some of the problem solving that you have to do aboard the ISS?
So the nerd in me kind of wishes that there were maybe some more concrete differential equations or calculus problems that we have to interact with on a daily basis. But the fact of the matter is it's a lot more general than that. And so what I appreciated from my mathematics degree is the scientific approach to any problem. And so I know a lot of the people in the room with you are familiar with the scientific method. And that means developing a hypothesis to a problem, checking your observations, developing experiments, checking those observations against what your hypothesis was, and seeing if you were right or not, and seeing how else you can modify your conclusions. That to me is one of the most humble disciplines that exists. And so that kind of humility of approaching every problem with a critical thinking brain, checking your observations, your biases, your assumptions, that's really what I learned from studying math, is that methodical approach to problem solving. And that's something that we use every single day here on operations on the International Space Station.
That's awesome. Thank you, sir. So my next question kind of switches over to the medical side, because as it turns out, you've done a couple of things in your life that are not just math and not just being an astronaut. So that question is, as a flight surgeon and an astronaut, so how does that training influence, how you care for crew health and microgravity? But it's also, are there any assumptions that you had that you brought with you from your medical training that have changed in the environment, both in microgravity or the size of the ISS, and some of the potentially unique situations that you might find there?
Yeah, so space has been a humbling environment in so many different ways. Medicine is certainly one of them. I would say maybe first start off in that having a basis in medicine back to my early days as a combat medic in the SEAL teams to later being a physician was having that really understanding of how our bodies work, the human physiology. And so we have evolved over a long period of time to use gravity. We depend on gravity for our circulatory system, our musculoskeletal system. And so when we go on into space, a lot of those things change. And so that basis in physiology has helped me appreciate why we do countermeasures like the advanced resistive exercise device, why we have to go on a bike or run every single day or lift weights for an hour and a half every single day. It's to counteract a lot of the, it's hard to say maladaptive, but in terms of terra firma, maladaptive changes to our musculoskeletal system, our muscles are going to atrophy. We're going to lose bone density if we don't do those countermeasures every single day. So that basis in medicine has certainly helped me appreciate some of that. There's also been some other physiological changes that my background has helped me appreciate. And one of those is the fluid shifts that occur within our body. So without microgravity, you can often see it in times in a lot of astronauts' faces. In fact, my face might be a little bit more puffy than it would be on Earth. And that's because without microgravity, the fluid distribution changes within our body. And it's thought that some of these fluid distribution changes might actually lead to some of the negative things we see from long duration spaceflight. One of those in particular is space-associated neuroocular syndrome, which we call SANS for short. It's a bit of a mouthful. We don't exactly know what or why it occurs, but the leading hypothesis is that a lot of the fluid changes that occur within our body might increase the pressure inside our head, which then might put some undue pressure on the back of our eyes, specifically the optic nerve, and that might lead to some maladaptive changes over a long period of time. There's, of course, everyday crew health things that we had to consider that change in microgravity. And I'm just going to give you an example for one that I didn't even consider until I came up here on the International Space Station, is that without gravity, fluids behave very, very differently. And so let's say you were to give a bag of saline of IV fluid to someone, you're going to have to remove that air because in Earth-based environment, that air would just go to the top and wouldn't be an issue. But if you're going to give IV fluids to a patient, then you've got to find a way to get rid of that air. Those are just some of the many changes that I've been very humbled by this new environment in space.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I was a medic for a really long time, so that was one of those that always kind of, struck me as how do they do a lot of the medical stuff that they have to do. So thank you for that. So the next one just kind of talks to more of a career side, in particular, the piece of it of kind of how you've moved from career to career and how kind of fundamentally different some of those career changes are. So given that you've built an expertise across multiple fields, what advice might you give a group of STEM interns about intentionally designing a career that spans diverse domains?
So I'd be very careful with using the word expert, or at least I would. I'm wary of that word. I feel like lifelong learning, like lesson one is be a lifelong learner. And that's what I would say to the interns and all the folks that are watching, is that curiosity, being foundationally based in that curiosity, is what drives so much of learning. And so I'm scared of the word expert because that to me means that you're at the top of the field and you don't have much room to learn. And I have always considered myself a forever student. I'd say is just focus your studies or what you want to do around your passions. I mean, don't go in with the mindset of, I'm going to build a diverse set of experiences in all these different domains and wear all these different hats. I think if you maintain an attitude of lifelong learning and the humility, that curiosity, that drive to keep being the best version of yourself, you're going to naturally span multiple different domains. And I think the trick is you're never too old to stop learning. I think sometimes we feel that, hey, we're in our 30s or we're in our 40s, at least for me now, we're at the peak of our careers or the peak of what we can do as operators or learn as students. That's not true at all. I mean, it is the only glass ceiling you can't break through is the one you place on yourself. So learning never stops, growing never stops. Always challenge yourself to be outside of your comfort zone. One of the things that I've learned through my experiences as a SEAL is that we all dull over time. It takes iron to sharpen iron. And so no matter what you've done or what hard things or challenges you've overcome, if you don't maintain that edge, you will eventually dull. And so I think when you kind of maintain that humility, that lifelong learning, and always challenging yourself to be outside your comfort zone, you greatly expand the scope of what you think you're capable of doing across multiple different domains.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So the next one goes, honestly, it probably delves a little more personally. So forgive me for that. But given that you've shifted identities from SEAL to physician to astronaut, kind of how did you internally manage those transitions? Right, those are fundamentally different environments that you would find in, and did you have any specific strategies that you used to help yourself kind of transition personally?
So I think it's important to really peel peel back the layers of what we mean by identity. And I think identity is important. We all need to have one or identify with something. But I think it can be dangerous to define ourselves by a fixed identity. Identities evolve over time. I mean, the person you identified with in high school is different than the person you identified with in your 20s or your present day, right? I mean, it's just natural for all of our identities to evolve as we get more wise, as we make more mistakes, as we grow up. But I think values should be more fixed. They should be more foundational. And so when you base your work, your passions, your life around a set of values that you firmly believe in, ethical, moral values, the identity just kind of continues to evolve around that. And so for me, the examples you gave, I had to redefine myself every single time. And yes, it was difficult. It certainly was difficult and challenging for me having to essentially start over in my late 20s after having a career as a combat tested SEAL. Starting all the way over, I was 26 or 27 when I started undergrad. And so that was challenging, but in a lot of ways, I remembered the reasons why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And for me, it's been the same, is make a positive impact in the world, in others people's lives, something that's measurable. And for me, that was doing it through the SEAL teams as a warrior. Through a lot of hard experiences, I learned that I wanted to make a good impact, but in a different way. And I redefined what it meant to be a warrior. To me, a warrior is someone that is in constant pursuit of excellence in their chosen craft. It doesn't have to be combat. In many instances, we have warriors everywhere. In fact, I think the definition of a warrior is met in what we do here in spaceflight, on the flight control teams and the engineers and the instructors. We work so hard for the betterment of others towards a common goal. And so when I peel back the layers of the different things that I've had the opportunity to do, that North Star has been the same the entire time. It might have looked a little bit different, maybe a different uniform or a different setting, but for me, it's always been the same. And so I'd say to anyone that's in that room with you or watching is that you keep that North Star bright. Keep your values. Know what you're fighting for. The different hats you wear are not as important.
Thank you very much. That values conversation comes up quite a lot in our office down here. So the next one, I was actually having a conversation with somebody just before we went live, kind of about this thing, and it is balancing that. You were a SEAL corpsman. Obviously, you had a lot of time in combat. You went on to become a physician, and so how do you manage those ethical conflicts that generally arise when you're kind of in direct combat, but your role is one of the people who's there to help and to save, while simultaneously also having to do the job that a SEAL may be there to do?
So I know it sounds kind of contradictory and maybe hard to define where the boundaries are. So for me, I also, to be honest with you, before I went to combat, I also thought that those lines would be quite blurry and potentially maybe difficult to do. But in practice, I found that, combat's a hard thing, and it amplifies the most extreme of human emotions. But when you base your code of ethics and your morality and your professionalism, it becomes very clear. We always worked within the ethical guidelines of the rules of engagement when we were in those kinds of situations. And my decree as a combat medic was to be a non-combatant as soon as the threat was no longer a threat. And then it shifted from non-biased treatment of another human being. And I think that is something we all as humans can identify with, is helping people in their time of need. And for me, it was the same pursuit of service, that North Star we talked about. Certainly, the execution of it looked very, very different depending on what hat I was wearing. But for me, it was still in the service of others. And so I found in practice that it actually wasn't as blurry of a line that I was nervous about. Helping someone else in their greatest time of need is one of the greatest things we can do. And it's certainly what propelled me to want to take my level of service in a different direction after the SEAL teams and pursue medicine. And that's actually why I'm so passionate about space exploration. It's something that a lot of people work really hard together to do, something that's very hard, that brings people together from all corners of the life. I mean, we're on the International Space Station. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a private astronaut mission up here. We had 11 people representing 6 different countries. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. And so next question. So with all of the things that you've done, and from a career perspective and all of the things that you've accomplished, because you're currently floating on the ISS while we're chatting, what's next? When Expedition 73 wraps and you return, do you have any thoughts on what's next?
I mean, in the immediate short term, I'd like to be able to give back to the Astronaut Corps, to the very agency, NASA, that's given me so many of the privileges I have today. You know, I think I've been the product of so many opportunities, and I need to find a way to give that back. You know, long term, I don't know what my service will look like for the rest of my life, but I do know that North Star I talked about earlier is very bright and important for me. And it is the constant pursuit of excellence in doing what I can to make the biggest impact in a positive way in our world.
Awesome. So we're about done. I just wanted to say thank you very much again for being with us. I'm looking out at the room, and I think everybody here is really, really appreciative of your time and your insight. Enjoy the rest of your time that you have up there. And if you find yourself when you get back to Earth around Eglin Air Force Base, look us up, and I would love to give you a tour and show you this fantastic space.
Mitch, it's been an honor and a really fun time having this conversation with you. You asked some really, really great engaging questions. I love that part of the country, so I might have to take you up on it. And thank you again for everything that you continue to do to serve others, to mentor the very people that are in that room with you. And so to everyone there, goodbye from the International Space Station.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications. And Johnny will definitely send you some differential equations if you do want some.
Thanks, Scotty.
Appreciate it. When you're ready, Johnny, we can also hook you up with some of